What's going on, everyone? Today is an exciting day because we get a bunch more spoilers, and some of these cards look pretty sweet. In fact, we've even got some brand new legendaries to go over. I mean, we're going to dive right into it. Huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, guys. I've been watching all of your comments in the spoiler chat, and it has been so fun. Honestly, this is like the most favorite time of the season when we get all the spoilers coming in for the new set. It is just so much fun. Let's dive in straight away. We've got Baze Malbus first up, 7-cost ground unit in Vigilance, Aggression, Heroism. Honestly, the dual aspect cards makes me more excited than any other set in the game. I just love dual aspect cards. I love just like the contrary colors or anything. Just honestly, just the whole look of it is just so exciting to me. 6/8 Rebel, Sentinel. When one or more damage is healed from this unit, you may deal that much damage to a unit. So 7 resource, 6/8 Sentinel is honestly pretty beefy. You know, we've had like Captain Rex, which is a 7/7 Sentinel, and that is pretty decent. So this one definitely has some competition to like battle it out against, especially since, you know, someone like Captain Rex is actually a 6-cost unit. So it does give your opponent Sentinel, yes, but generally that's going to be more valuable for you. So you really got to get value out of this getting healed and, you know, 1 damage to another unit. I'm thinking back to like the Ezra that we mentioned earlier, where if you control certain unit, I believe that this one would heal 2 baseline, and then I can't remember what aspect it was for you to heal 4, but something of that note in order for you to kind of get a little bit of extra value. Now that I remember, I think Ezra was Vigilance Command. So since he was Vigilance Command, you're going to be able to get a little bit of extra value from Baze and then heal 4, you know, something like that. I mean, that's 4 damage to a unit. That can be pretty disgusting. So you really need to get value from it, and there's definitely some ways to do so, with especially since the other part to Baze, the dynamic duo, we've got Chirrut. Now, it's really important to note that Chirrut comes down before Baze. We got a 6-cost Chirrut, same aspects, Vigilance, Aggression, 8/6, so very aggressive stat line. I mean, 6 cost 8 power, that's pretty spicy. It's got Saboteur, and when the attack ends, if this unit dealt damage to a base, you may heal 4 damage from another unit. So obviously, this curves into each other. I love the design of these cards. I'm not 100% sure if they're going to be like super competitive or anything like that based on what I'm seeing here. I could see potential for them, but I love the way they designed it. They obviously designed it for them to work together, and they made it make sense. I hate when you have cards that are like, oh, well, like this is a turn off, or like I want to play this one before this one, but they're the same cost, etc. This one just makes total sense. You have a 6-cost unit, you play out Chirrut. He's pretty tanky. He's probably going to survive. He's got Saboteur, so you can guarantee your attack into base for most cases. And then before you even make an attack, you immediately drop Baze on the following turn. So Chirrut readies up. You drop Baze. Maybe they wanted to attack, but suddenly they've got to get through Baze. So they got to have an answer to Baze, or they've got to, you know, hit him. And if they hit him, well, suddenly you could just ignore them, hit Baze, heal up your Baze, deal 4 to something. It just works so nicely together. I love the design of these types of cards. I think it's really, really well thought out, and it just enforces some more exciting deck building to me. I just enjoy that a little bit more. There's something exciting about cards that like work together, or you kind of set up, or you have a deck that really synergizes well, instead of just cards that do well. You know, a perfect example of this is like, you know, Han 2 Blue. In decks past, you kind of just played the best cards on curve. There wasn't really like a whole lot of synergy to the deck. Obviously, there was cards that were particularly good in Han, like Grogu, for example. But there wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna play this card and then this card and this card, because they all work together and they do good stuff. It was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and play my Grogu on turn 1, and then I'm gonna drop whatever 4-drop I've got, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and play Poe Dameron, and then I'm gonna play Anakin, and then I'm gonna play Luke, and it's like GG, you know. I just like the design of this type of stuff much, much more. So I'm really, really excited to get some use out of it. It's also both Rebel tags, so that can be relevant as well. Maybe there's some Hera. Maybe there's some Hera gameplay there. I don't know. We also have Staccato, Lightning Repeater. So Baze's weapon here. We've got Aggression, Heroism, 3-cost upgrade. Attached to a non-vehicle unit. When played, you deal 1 damage to each of up to 3 different ground units, and it's +3/+1. So, of course, the first thing I think of is you got to put this on Baze, right? Now, instead of having a 6/8 Sentinel, you've got a 9/9 Sentinel, and that's pretty cool. That said, I don't think this is like particularly amazing or anything. Maybe if there's something really well synergized with upgrades, +3/+1 is very, very squishy. There's a lot of ways to deal with something like that when you play it on a unit. It's also not able to be played to vehicle units, which is where the extra power usually gets a little bit more value. And the 1 damage to each of up to 3 ground units. Ground unit specification is a little bit sad, since usually the space option is going to be a little bit better when you're dealing mass damage like this. I immediately think of like Vader Yellow, for example, taking a bunch of TIE Fighter tokens. Not that that's going to be specifically like, oh, I want to play Staccato Lightning Repeater for this, but the bigger thing is it just gets more versatile. And unfortunately, we don't have that. Upgrades are notoriously weak in general. Of course, there's a few that really have done well, like Yoda's lightsaber in like Sabine, or General's blade in Anakin, getting those specific value curves. Yes, there are some upgrades that do some work, craving power, but this one I don't think will really be one of them, unless you can get some major value out of the 1 damage. But that's not all we've got today. Moving on, we've got Ben Solo up next, and just like the Baze Chirrut, we've got a duo here. First one's Ben. The second one, I hope you can guess it, but we're going to find out shortly. Spoiler. 9 cost ground unit in aggression heroism. It's an 8/8 force tag with hidden. Okay, so hidden's actually kind of interesting to me. That said, it is an 8/8, which means like there's not many chances that your opponent's just going to be able to kill this thing. So hidden, I don't think is going to get like too much value. Maybe a surprise finish. But it does have when played and when defeated, you ready? Another friendly unit. And that unit can't be attacked this phase. This is a legendary, by the way. This is pretty awesome in terms of like some surprise finishings of games. I'm really interested to see, like, maybe I can drop this in Anakin and wait for 9 deploy and deploy like an 9 power to Anakin, and then deploy Ben and then double attack with Anakin with Overwhelm or something like that. Like, that's something pretty cool. But I don't actually think this is like all that insane. 9 drop ground units, for one, 9 drops are just tough in some matchups. Like, sometimes you just don't want that. And a lot of the times you want cards that are going to give you either a big board presence or allow you to recover in the game. Look at the cards that, for example, are being played in Heroism Aggression. For example, Anakin Green. You're looking at Caloran Beck. You're looking at Home 1. Some Force decks play Yoda, right? These decks don't really, benefit a crazy amount from Ben. Now, I do think the when played and when defeated trigger can be good. It's just, we'll see if we have the kind of deck set up to be able to utilize that. I don't think it's like weak or anything like that. I just don't really see the premier viability. This is going to be a sweet Twin Suns cards, I'll say that. I know you guys love to hear me talk about Twin Suns, and there's some spice here. There's some spice. And of course, the other one, guys, if you hadn't figured it out already, Rey, A-cost ground unit. By the way, another one that kind of curves into each other. And so, this is kind of where you get some strength out of it. It's command heroism. She's a 9/9, so she's even stronger than Kylo Ren. And it says opponents can't take control of this unit. And more importantly, this unit can't be defeated by enemy card abilities. Now, Sentinels still kind of mess Rey up. However, this is one of those cards where your opponent just has to deal with it. And that can be super obnoxious. I can definitely see this be an option in sideboards. I could definitely see this maybe be like 1 or 2 of in the main deck for some of those late game options. Like, imagine if you're fighting against like Yoda Green, for example. Or you're fighting against, the controlling decks. And not that we're going to have Power of the Dark Side in the meta, hopefully, in the future. But this kind of goes around all of the normal options that you have for dealing with it. Like, let's just think about Chewbacca, for example. Yes, you could still exhaust. Yes, you could still put like entrenched or things like that. But for example, no glory only results does not work on Rey. You cannot take control of the unit. So one of the main ways to deal with Chewbacca is no longer there. You can't defeat an upgrade and get rid of Chewbacca or Rey. You have to deal with it either A, by exhausting it on repeat, B, by reducing its stats, or C, by just doing a lot of damage to it. Obviously, you can stall it by putting sentinels in its way and things like that, but it does look like it can do some interesting things. And of course, you play Rey, you get a smack in with it, almost guaranteed, and then you play Ben and ready it up. I would say the biggest weakness to our, I mentioned, kind of doing all those things. There's one other way you can kind of deal with Rey, and that is to bounce it. So Chewbacca does have one added line of text that Rey does not, and that is that you can not bounce Chewbacca. Let me see if I can pull this up here for you guys, just to show you the comparison here, because this is very, very, very much like Chewbacca. So let me just put this on screen here. This unit can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities. And so similar, but not quite the same, has additional strengths, but also additional weaknesses than Chewbacca. I think overall it's weaker than Chewbacca, which is why I think it's going to be relegated to maybe sideboard or maybe like 1 or 2 copies main deck instead of the 3 of copies that we've seen in some of the main decks in some of the more popular aggressive or piloting based decks like Han Green, for example. As we move on, we've got putting a team together. We've got 1 cost event in command. Search the top 8 cards for a vigilance, aggression, or cunning unit. You reveal it and draw it. Pretty straightforward. The first thing I immediately think of as, I just got to call it out because I know you guys love to hear me talk about Twin Suns, guys. Twin Suns, you get to pull out your singleton cards. Pretty cool. Maybe there's some sort of value from drawing cards, like the Rey from set 5, where you get to go ahead and immediately get that Rey and then deal the 2 damage. I mean, 1 resource to search the top 8 is kind of a lot. A lot of searching. Yes, you have to pick those specific aspects, and yes, it's kind of awkward because it's a command and it's mentioning 3 aspects that are not command. But that's kind of the whole theme of the set, right? Is that you get to pick up cards. I don't think this is going to be like anything too spectacular. I could see it being playable. I just don't think it's all that incredible or anything like that outside of your Twin Suns gameplay. And then we've got Kanan. Juicy looking Kanan. To be honest, this guy looks incredible. 4 cost ground unit in cunning, vigilance, heroism. 3/4 Force Jedi Rebel Spectre. All relevant tags. Jedi is relevant, Force Rebel, and Spectre are all relevant for the respective reasons that I mentioned with Ezra. So Force unit obviously triggers any Force synergies, Rebel obviously triggers any Rebel synergies, and we've got quite a few of them. And then Spectre is specifically important for any sort of Hera synergies, if you want to use that. It's got Restore 1, but most importantly has this when played of, you may return a non-leader unit that costs 2 or less to its owner's hand. If you control a command or aggression unit, you may return a non-leader unit that costs 4 or less instead. This gives you the opportunity, and I mean, this is an incredible card. I do not see how this isn't going to be playable, with the exception of not being able to make a deck with these aspects in mind. Everything this does is like exactly what I want in a lot of tempo-based strategies. You get a 4 resource body that disrupts your opponent by disrupting their board. You get a little bit of restoration, which doesn't really matter, but the important part is you're putting pressure on your opponent and you're disrupting their strategy. This looks amazing, especially since, when we're going in and thinking about, okay, what are we going to be playing on the 4-drop curve in our tempo decks? Well, we're losing one of the most powerful ones. Which was, Chirrut. Chirrut has been an incredible 4-drop in the cunning category, and this fits that style, but does something a little bit different. Now you have Ahsoka to attack the hand, and you have Kanan to potentially bounce the board. And honestly, bouncing the board, getting rid of Sentinels or things like that is incredible. Again, it comes down on 4, and if you have a command aggression unit, which is very, very likely for you to have, you get to return a 4 cost. You can literally negate an entire player's turn. Or if you have the initiative, you just bounce a super laser technician, right? I mean, that is incredible. There are so many different options for this card. Now, granted, as I always say, we'll see if super laser technician will be in the format. I honestly think they're going to reprint it, but that's the type of impact this guy can have. Okay, so I'm really excited for Kanan. I think this guy's incredible. I mean, this guy looks just insane. Like everything about my Magic days is just like, this is a broken card. And then playing Star Wars Unlimited, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is also a pretty broken card. So the combination of the two, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, I don't see how this could be bad, with the exception of building a deck around these aspects. That's the biggest limitation it has. The payoff is there. It's whether or not we have a nice curve. Ezra would be a decent one to play in the deck. unfortunately, he's 4 costs, so you can't like curve into that. So maybe you omit Ezra, maybe you play a different one. We need to see more, options. I mean, you've got Han Solo on turn 1. I think it's a 1 resource shielded 1/1. That's Vigilance Command that attacks and gains an experience. Like, that could be one of the things you play in the early game, and then it's got shielded, so it's most likely to survive. I mean, options, right? Options. As we move on, I think this is the last card we're going to talk about. We've got Luke Skywalker. So, with Luke Skywalker, we've got a 7-cost ground unit in Aggression, Cunning, Heroism. He's a 9/7. 9/7. Force Jedi Rebel, and when he's played, your opponent rather chooses one. They can create a credit token, and if they do, they ready the Luke, or you, as the player of Luke, can deal 5 damage to a unit. So when you look at this, you're like, oh, is this kind of replacing our Luke Skywalker of the world? Like, oh, that's pretty strong. First things first, it's not nearly as powerful as Luke, in my opinion. Coming down, the -3, -3, or -6 was just more powerful in general. I think just getting a guaranteed effect that you can control so you know the outcome is just going to be that much better for you. Not only that, but Restore 3 ends up being a really, really big hamstring for some decks. And so all of those things, I think, make Luke a little bit stronger. However, Luke, in this case, they could do some pretty nice things. Now, having your opponent choose does make it a much more complicated card. I've played like a lot of Thrawn, for example, the other 7-drop that was released in the previous set, the 8/7, that allows your opponent to, either, choose a non-leader unit they control to get captured, or, get Thrawn readied. I'll say this, I haven't been like extremely impressed with that card, mainly because the capture just hasn't been that effective. And, in some cases, getting a readied up 8/7, they just immediately deal with it. And that's something similar to Luke. Like, if you play Luke, your opponent can just create a credit token. Yes, Luke gets readied, but if they have the Fell the Dragon, they just fell your Luke. And you've just given them a credit token for 7 resources. You've done nothing. That's pretty unfortunate. So, like, let's say you instead played the other Luke. Well, you've gotten to kill something, and, they felled it, but, well, at least they don't have a credit token on top of it. Now, the 5 damage, in some cases, maybe they won't have an answer to Luke, and so they choose you may deal 5 damage to a unit, but what if they don't have any units, right? Who cares? So I do think there's a lot of fail cases with Luke. I don't think it's weak by any means. I am just worried anytime you have opponent choice, it really, really hinders the card, unless by a baseline, you're always going to get something. One of the cards I think of whenever I think about like an opponent chooses is like cards, again, I'm going to refer to Magic here, but like Fact or Fiction, where you get to choose a pile, your opponent goes through and chooses pile of the cards that you've drawn off the top, and then you get to choose one of those piles as a, baseline, guys, for not to get too specific about Magic and all the wording and what that card actually says. You're always going to get something. You're always going to get, some sort of card draw and potentially a little bit of selection from that group. In this case, there's a chance where you've played a 7 resource, do nothing. Like, literally do nothing. I mean, I guess it's like discard a card from your opponent, right, with a Fell. And you might think, well, dies to something. Is that really something that is worth talking about? Maybe. Maybe it's not. Maybe you just get a 7 resource 9/7. Is a 7 resource 9/7, nothing when played, is that good enough? Maybe it's good enough. I think it's very possible. So I don't want to be too harsh on this card because I do think it's sweet, and I think the art is really cool. The 9/7, more power than Thrawn. It's got Cunning Aggression in its combination. I love the dual aspect cards. I actually want to see the normal art for this more than I want to see the special art. I've been a big fan of the normal art with the dual colored borders. But overall, I'm not like insanely high. I'm like, this seems decent. It seems decent. It's kind of where I'm landing on. Let me know what you guys think about all these new cards. I mean, there were quite a few different additions. I'm really excited about Chirrut and Baze. Honestly, the thing I like about Chirrut and Baze is the design of these cards, just how they mesh so well together. Your Rey and Ben, I think, don't mesh as well, although they do have a similar feel where they're kind of designed for each other. I do think Rey can be a little bit interesting. Kanan looks absolutely broken. And then Luke, honestly, I also like the design of this card too. There's something to be said, even though I mentioned like the old Luke, the other 7-drop Luke that's going to be rotating out is probably just better. It's also just better. Like, there's not any like opponent decision or decision making that you're doing with the card. You're like, I got 7 resources. What I'm going to be playing in my Luke or in my Vigilance deck, I'm going to be playing Luke, and I'm going to be dropping him, and I'm going to be killing something, and it's going to be good every single time. Well, this is a little bit more fun. So props to them. I think that's a more fun design of one of our favorite characters in Star Wars. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited to see people play with this one. Let me know what you think, guys, though. What's your favorite card of this one? Are you excited about some of these legendaries? Let me know, and I'll see you all for the next one.